What's going on, people? It's your man the YB back once again. So, as you've likely seen by now, your man's the undisputed TikTokagram champion of the world, Ryan TikTok Garcia, has rolled up and smoked on that Javier Fortuna pack nicely. I tell it like it weren't that nicely. I'm going to be honest with you. I've got a video coming soon. I spoke to some executives. I spoke to some officials involved in the event yesterday, and essentially, hate to break it to you, the fight was highly likely to have been some sort of fix. But anyway, like I said, stay tuned for that video tomorrow. This video, we're going to review the fight, whatever you want to make of it. But the reason I've foretold you about the fight being a fix is, this fight really comes down to the fact that Fortuna, for salmon and tuna, was dying to jump on the floor. He was spitting his gum shield out multiple times, doing a whole bunch of weirdo behaviour, and after all that woofing as well. And this is why people are never bet. And I guess that's why people lose money, or win money sometimes, gambling on underdogs, because you just never know, do you? Sometimes you get someone like Cambosos who turns up, other times you get bags of milk, like this dude here, Fortuna, who was talking all the woof, no word of a lie. I even started getting a bit gassed. Number one, Eddie Hearn came out and said, "Oh, I'm not sure, if Ryan Garcia is going to be able to squabble with this guy. This guy's solid." Then I had Fortuna himself saying, this is a Ryan Garcia show. It's a Golden Boy event. I know the only way I'm going to win is by knockout. I know I can't win on points. I'm thinking, damn, this guy actually thinking about how to win their squabbles. Do you know what I'm saying? Normally, when bums are paid off to jump on the floor, they ain't thinking about smart ways or how to actually win. I thought, damn, that's a fair point. If this Nick is turning up to really stick it all over Ryan Garcia because he knows he needs a KO to get the W, he might actually be about something. Guess what? All that talk of I need a KO to win, where was it? He went in there looking like that last dude did, Bumgo. Yeah, Bumgo went in there. These guys, they turn up just to do nothing to lose. Never once, and bear in mind, this dude here, Fortuna, was a smaller man. Now, I understand, being a smaller man, it is difficult fighting people who are taller and bigger. Naturally, we get that. But guess what? You signed up for the fight. You was talking about KO. He went in there, didn't see any pressure. In fact, Ryan Garcia, the lankier guy, was backing Fortuna up the whole night. Backing him up the whole night. Where was all the pressure? Where was the aggressiveness? There was no aggressiveness. I remember before the fight, people saying, this is a real test for Ryan Garcia. Fortuna's aggressive. There was 6 rounds, yeah? Did any of you man see any real intention for him to win? No word of a lie, to Zone, they put out the highlights video. It was 10 minutes long, and guess what? There was no highlights from Tego. I kid you not. In a 6-round fight, there was genuinely not even one combination of Tego doing anything in there. He literally went in there to be a milk can, to be knocked over. It's embarrassing, but this sums up the quality of boxing today, unfortunately. Now we've got that part of the way. Whilst I've been heavily aggressive against Fortuna, what I will say is Ryan Garcia did his thing. He looked better. Well, I want to say he looked better than the last time, but then again, we just don't know. Was Fortuna paid to keep jumping on the floor and spitting his gum shield out? We'll find out more about that tomorrow. That's what we will do. So I just found it all a bit odd. Now, again, let's assume for a second Fortuna was genuinely stopped, which I find questionable, but still, let's assume he was genuinely stopped. On that basis, Ryan Garcia did do his thing. I have to admit, his defense is pretty tight, but however, his defense looks tight. No one was firing back. Do you get what I'm saying? Little things he does, Ryan Garcia is pretty good at pulling back and rolling the shoulder and dipping at the waist. Them typical high-level defensive maneuvers. He looks like he's got them down to some degree, but what we know is you never really find out how good someone's D is until they're in there with someone with accuracy and punching power and turning up to win. Ryan Garcia's really never fought someone who's actually there to win. Number one, there to win, and number one, believes they can win and knows they're going to win. Do you know what I'm saying? These guys turn up to be the B-side every single time. So it's one of them ones for me. But let's take this for what it is. Ryan Garcia, his hands are very quick. And again, Devin Haney says his hands look quick. And this is something that does need to be noted. Hands looking quick is relative to your opponent. For example, we had Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte in the ring back in April. Dillian Whyte looked so slow because Tyson Fury looked quick. Now the point is, Ryan Garcia's hands have been looking quick, but who are he in there with? If we see, listen, it might be the case, I'm not sure, it might be the case that we see Ryan Garcia's hands looking quick against Gervonta Davis, looking quick against Devin Haney. But whilst he's fighting these low-level dudes, the same way Tyson Fury looks super quick against Dillian Whyte, you just don't know, and that's the problem here with these bum fights. You don't know where you stand. And that's why often today you see people like Rolly Romero, they fight these low-level dudes, and then they get in there with a top-level cat and just get their boots smoked because they've got no experience dealing with a proper operator who's dialed in. And that's why it's a bit worrying. Then again, who else can Ryan Garcia fight before Tank? Who would he fight? Who's that middle level? And that's the problem with the boxing today, really. There is no mid-level guys. Back in the 80s and 90s, yeah, there was like the top 3 guys who was smoking hot. But then beyond that, there was genuine top 20 dudes who were dangerous, who were proper athletes and dangerous, who were trying to win, and that's why often there was many upsets back in the day. For example, Roy Jones versus Antonio Tarver. Tarver at the time wasn't considered to be a top 3 guy. He wasn't. That burst him onto the scene, but that's the point I'm making. Back then, people who were top 10, like Tarver, who was at the time, can come in there and just light up one of the GOATs, Roy Jones. Do you understand? Where are them middle guys who are lurking in the top 10? You don't have them. You have the top 3 or 4, and then the drop-off, and the rest, really, apart from the top 4, apart from Devin Haney, Tank, maybe Ryan Garcia. We don't even know if Ryan Garcia is prepared to dig in a hard fight yet. We haven't seen it. But apart from them top 4 guys, they're the only ones, really, you can be sure about who will turn up and actually try and win. I mean, even look at George Kambosos. He turned up. Was he really trying to win against Devin Haney? Did you see him doing the most? I didn't. Oops. You understand? So, I mean, it is what it is, man. I salute Ryan Garcia. His hands look quick against the opponent he was in there with. He did what he had to do. His form looks pretty solid. He's a big dude as well. And that's why I do agree the fight needs to be at 140 for Tank. I think that Ryan Garcia needs that advantage. Because of whatever we say about Tank Davis, he's gone in there with Pitbull. He's passed the Pitbull test. That's the only win I'm really going to give Tank Davis, the Pitbull win. That's the only win I can say. Pitbull, for example, he's one of the dudes, actually. And that's why it would have been a great test. Pitbull, for me, yeah, is that dude who's just sitting below Haney, Tank. Do you know what I'm saying? That's the kind of guy I'm talking about. Pitbull reminds me of a throwback top kind of 7 dude. Throwback top 6 dude. Who will go in there, actually turn up to win. When Pitbull was in there with Tank, yeah, more time he was turning up to win. Now actually he probably should have. I think at the time I said Pitbull should have pushed a bit more. But still, that's the kind of guy I feel that if Ryan Garcia goes in there, yeah, and shows us these quick hands and lights up Pitbull, then he will be a serious favourite, maybe even, to beat Tank. But he ain't trying to do that, is he? And I get it, from a money point of view. Why would you want to do that? Why go in there with Pitbull and lose for a few million when you can go in there and lose against Tank for 10? Welcome to 2022. But yeah, man, I ain't going to spend no more time analysing this fight for the reasons I've mentioned. Fights are only worth analysing when it means something. If you're in there and you've got quick hands and you're lighting up Pitbull, we can talk about that. We can talk how that applies to the future. But when you're in there with a tin can, lighting him up, and he jumping on the floor every 5 seconds, spitting his gum shield out. What are we talking about here? Again, even with his defense. Okay, Ryan Garcia's defense looked pretty slick, but there was no staggered attacks, was there? You didn't see Tego setting his attack up or pressing or throwing combinations, ever. He was in there to get picked apart. So yeah, Ryan Garcia did well he did well. But the questions that remained before the fight, can Ryan Garcia work out a top operator, remain today the same way? Really, Fortuna didn't ask any questions we didn't already know. He didn't solve anything for us. We didn't glean any new information about Ryan Garcia. Now, what I will say is, if the stoppage was genuine and not faked, I will say that there's an argument that Ryan Garcia is looking in better form now. compared to the Tago fight. In the Tago fight, he looked a lot more nervous. He looked a lot more jitty. At times, Ryan Garcia was scared to almost work him out. Now, Fortuna was arguably the same kind of way. I think Fortuna and Tago, they're both similar kind of guys. Went in there and just weren't doing a lot. The point is, Ryan Garcia stopped this guy. That implies that he's become more confident. Or he's got that ring rust out now. And he's got more confident. He's just letting his hands look, honestly, when his hands are flying, they look nice. But we just don't know how that works at the top level. But let's get something straight here. I do believe Ryan Garcia's hands are quick. But they say, I mean, look at Tank. Timing beats speed. People may have said that, I mean, I saw Rolly Romero on the pads. He looked quick. He looked dangerous on the pads. Guess what? Tank Davis got in there, timed him, and he was sleeping with one shot. It is what it is. I will also say before I go, I do like Ryan Garcia's defense. I do like how he changes his stances up. He's able to. He can give you the low lead hand, that Floyd Mayweather shoulder roll kind of stance. He can give you the Canelo style full guard. I do rate that. He's more dynamic. A lot of fighters these days are a bit, well, not tell a lie actually. Dev Haney can do the same. Tank Davis does the same, but traditionally that's quite unusual. Most fighters normally, they have their stance. Either they're going in high guard or they're going in the mixed one. Obviously, it makes the most sense to be loosey-goosey and be able to switch it up. Changing, giving your opponent different looks, and also defensively, different stances make sense at different times. Anyway, man, let's see how it plays out. For sure, though, it has to be said, if the fight wasn't rigged, Garcia is doing what he's supposed to do, but looking good doing it. We've seen dudes before go in there, stop someone, and it looks scrappy. He did look a class above tonight. My whole thing is, I've got questions about the validity. Of the stoppage. I don't know, man. Just all a bit iffy for me. A little bit too iffy. It's almost as if Ryan Garcia knew it was a matter of time. I.e., he'd been told, Tago going to jump on the floor at some point. Just go in there and do your thing. Which would explain why, I think, potentially after the Tago fight, Golden Boy realised, listen, it's no good. There's no hype being built with Ryan Garcia going in there and going 12 rounds with a bum. We need to make sure the bums jump on the floor. That's what I think's potentially been said. Don't forget, people, as well. De La Hoya's renowned. He told Canelo, if you were with us, we'd have got you to win. So De La Hoya's renowned for getting stuff done and for building his dudes. Yeah, so it's all a bit iffy for me. But listen, what we do know is Tank and Devin Haney, they won't be taking no dives. And that's where it will count. And what I will say is, if Ryan Garcia goes in there, yeah, and he lights up Dev Haney or lights up Tank Davis, obviously, I'm going to salute him as a true king, 100%, no doubt.